Hi guys, welcome to today's episode, and I'm so excited to introduce to you Dr. Amy Lee. She's the head of nutrition for Nucific, and today we're answering all of your questions about intermittent fasting. So let's start with the first one. Is intermittent fasting safe?
That's a very good question. I think in general, at least from my experience in seeing patients who are into all types of different diets, intermittent fasting, to my recommendation, is relatively safe if you, of course, follow the things to do, what not to do, and what to do, of course.
Okay, so why do you think intermittent fasting is so popular now? Like, if we had like a craze where it was like, South Beach diet, Atkins diet, it's kind of different things, but I think intermittent fasting is more popular than ever. And why do you think that is?
I think in general, when people start looking into different types of diets, and you'll be bombarded with all types on the internet. As time goes on, and with the evolution of nutrition science, and the more and more things that we know about macronutrients, what we can do with it, how we can manipulate different proportions to get a diet to do what we want it to do, meaning either lose weight, maintain weight, or gain weight. We start to learn, the details of what these types of nutrients are actually doing for us. So there are now a lot more clinical data and research that has been done specifically looking into fasting states or even, a high fat state or high protein state. And so intermittent fasting has been around for many, many years. It's not like a new invention that we have in, 2020. And so if anything, I think these things get sort of reactivated into the mainstream of research, and it allows us to do more clinical data and human trials as well as animal trials to really come up with correlations between what we do in a regimen and how that relates to disease states. And in most cases, I think a lot of people who are looking into intermittent fasting is really interested in weight management, but there's a whole handful of other benefits as well.
So talk about some of those.
Yeah, so some of the benefits besides weight loss really comes down to the idea of cellular and metabolic reactivation. What does that even mean? So it means that every cell in our body that has a functionality, it has a function, and it does what it does every day for us, we are able to turn on and off pathways and even activate genes and DNA that has sat dormant because of the way we live, the way we eat, the way we do things. And we are able to actually activate those specific things that otherwise wouldn't have been active by undergoing a intermittent fasting state. So which is super important, for not just for a physician like myself who specializes in nutrition, but also in the whole nutrition world. This really opened up this whole world of possibilities on what we can do on a daily basis in eating differently or fasting, which can alternate or at least change the way we metabolize and burn calories, or even take on calories that we eat on a daily basis. So one of the things that I talked about is this metabolic reactivation, cellular health, rejuvenation, and anti-aging is also another big deal, as well as, of course, weight management from cutting fat and fat tissue, which plays a huge role in our comorbid conditions and inflammation.
Hey guys, I really want you to join our intermittent fasting and OMAD Facebook group. We're doing tons of giveaways right now for posting your before and after pictures, and just for posting a question in there. We're giving away free protein shakes, some digest aid, all kinds of fun stuff. So please join our intermittent fasting and OMAD Facebook group. The link is in the show notes. So I want you to give your credentials, because it's really nice to have a board certified doctor answer some of these questions, because I think a lot of times, obviously, I'm not a doctor. And so when I speak, I can speak from my own personal experience, and I can also speak from thousands of women and men that I've seen have such great results. But I think sometimes people need to hear from a board certified physician that says, hey, this is the answer to this. So talk a little bit more of what is happening, scientifically when you fast. Give us some more things that are happening.
Sure. To answer the first question, my credentials really comes down to the fact that I do practice internal medicine. That is my first specialty. What I did was during training, actually, I was trained at USC, so undergoing internal medicine residency, where everyone after med school is basically taught to practice what they learn from books, right? And so in the process of understanding that majority of the patients that I was seeing were dealing with your common condition states such as hypertension, diabetes, chronic pain, depression, anxiety. And what we're trained as conventional physicians is to, hey, here's a medication to treat this diagnosis. And it got to a point where I realized, there's a common denominator in most of my patients that I'm treating. And it all came down to the idea of lifestyle. People are gaining weight. They were suffering from obesity. And so it really helped me sort of refocus my practice because I wanted to pivot in a way to actually do good and treat a disease state and hit it at the foundation. So I started looking for programs, around LA, and I got lucky and found this program at UCLA where I was able to accomplish or at least spend 2 years under a renowned physician in the nutrition department, ran clinical trials, and basically acquired a knowledge base in nutrition that was meant to train physicians like myself. So my credential now is I'm a medical obesity bariatrician, as well as internal medicine, plus a physician nutritionist. So I am triple board certified, and I have been focusing my whole career in the past 12 years in the practice of nutrition. It's super exciting. I mean, the evolution of nutrition has gone far, and compared to 20 years ago, I think nutrition therapy is still sort of viewed as snake oil, and call it that, where it's an alternative practice. We know what to do, but we are, as physicians, we're not really trained or equipped to carry out a therapy specifically, even for people with hypertension or cholesterol. Even though there is a nutrition therapy written somewhere in books and documented that we should implement lifestyle all the time as your first therapy, but it's just not a popular practice. Nowadays, more and more physicians are super aware of the fact that if we don't nip the problem at the butt, it's not going to get any better. And I would say the prevalence of overweightness and obesity is not going away. And so we as physicians really need to have that extra training. And I'm super happy that I have that. Now, and with the evolution of nutrition science, and I talked about this in your first question, it's just this ongoing research is just exploding. If you just even Google diet in itself, besides intermittent fasting, you probably are bombarded with 20 other regimens. But the question is, what is the right regimen for me? Because there isn't one thing that's right for everyone as well. So it does take a lot of sort of motivation on the consumer's part and also your viewers, to really sit down and understand what's right for me. How do I even navigate through all that? And how do I even read a research paper? And am I supposed to be able to read a research paper on nutrition? But the good thing is there are people like myself where we can interpret that stuff for you and basically make it as simplified as possible. And so hopefully I am able to offer that today.
Okay, so our next question is it good or bad to exercise while intermittent fasting? And I will say before I let you answer this that I personally work out 6 days a week. And every time I don't think I've ever worked out when I am in a fed state. Like I'm always in a fasted state. And for me, I feel like it helps burn fat because obviously your body needs sugar or some sort of energy to perform well from exercising. And normally your energy comes from all that's, the sugar and glycogen that's stored, right, in your liver.
Yeah.
And, in my mind, I'm constantly thinking, okay, this is great. I'm, exercising, I'm depleting those stores, and my body has no choice but to, instead of burning through those sugars that aren't available, your body's forced to burn through another energy source, which is your fat. So that's kind of what I always say to myself. But the interesting thing is, I think because I'm so used to, like one day, my trainer, I always work out in the morning, but my trainer's like, hey, I can't work out in the morning today. So I usually work out at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., something like that. And he was like, can we please move to the afternoon? I have a conflict this morning. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I had just finished lunch, and I think it was like a 2:00 appointment. He looked at me like, what is wrong with you? So I had eaten, and I was in a worse position. He's like, you are like good for nothing today, Chantel. And I'm thinking to myself, you're right. It just kind of dawned on me, like, what was the difference? One, it was a different time. My body wasn't used to it, but it was a big difference. And for me personally, I had a really hard time actually working out because I think I'm so used to working out in a fasted state.
That's actually a great point. And, there's definitely a handful of people who prefer to work out in the morning versus in the afternoon. And I know my patients it's all types. So, what you're describing, you're like a morning person almost. You probably thrive and work optimally in the morning hours, just even mentally, not just physically, but psychologically. You wake up, you perk up, you're ready to go. Whereas some people just can't even get out of bed, right? And so when it comes to exercise, which is interesting, it really depends on how what you're used to in the first place. You can train your body into being super efficient in the morning versus in the afternoon. It just depends on your habits. Now, in your case, you woke up. You have gone through a fasting state all night, right? It also means that your liver, like you said, have the stored glycogen, and then it's also there are an amount of sugar in glycogen form that is sitting in your muscles as well. So the first thing you do, you wake up and you go to the gym, and basically what the first thing you're going to end up doing is depleting all the glycogen in your stored compartments. Then your body will kick into what we call gluconeogenesis, where your body will start making sugar. Now, this is super important to also realize, and a lot of my patients actually probably don't even realize this, is that during a duration of exercise, it takes your body about 20 to 30 minutes to deplete all your storage. So psychologically, as a person at the gym, you can psychologically have an effect where once your sugar starts depleting, you get into what we call this exercise depression. This is sort of like the turning point. It'll either keep you on a treadmill or you'll actually get off the treadmill and go take a shower and leave. And most people don't know this. If you actually power through those maybe 5 to 10 more minutes of what we call exercise depression, your body starts making sugar again. Like I said, gluconeogenesis. Then it starts serving your brain, and then you start getting that euphoric high of exercise. So as long as you get over that hump, you're good. Now, this is all happening in the morning hours for you. In the afternoon, your body is very different. We go through this circadian rhythm of insulin, no insulin, insulin, no insulin, and it actually is affected by the foods that we eat. In your case, where in the afternoon, when you have food in the stomach, most people go through this thing called a food coma, right? And food coma is just a layman's term of saying, well, basically all the blood flow from the brain is now in the stomach, trying to sort of process and metabolize. And so for some people, that dip in the blood sugar and at least the circulation causes that kind of fatigue and tired sensation as well. So what you eat in the afternoon also plays a huge role in your motivation, as well as the amount that you eat as well. Because as long as you got something in the stomach, your body will try to metabolize and get rid of it first. And so then all of a sudden your blood sugar from your brain as well as your muscles are depleted and at least recirculating in the stomach, trying to metabolize that. So a lot of people like you can't really exercise in the afternoon for that very reason, because they're just tired and kind of bogged down. And also remember the many hours of sort of psychological stress or things that you have taken on. becomes a distraction in your brain. So that motivation to exercise in the afternoon also becomes a little bit different compared to the fact that you woke up feeling great in a fasting state, and being able to power through it in the morning. So I hope that makes sense for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, I'd love for you guys to listen to a podcast that we did about the side effects from wine and the differences between natural wine and traditional wine. So go to chantelrayway.com/wine and you'll see transcripts, you'll see some different episodes. But here's the thing, you can get your penny bottle now of dry farm wines and make the decision that if you're going to have wine, to make sure you have the most natural, healthy wine in the world with no additives, only natural ingredients. All the other wines out there have so much sulfate, so much sugar. Why put that poison in your body? So get your penny bottle now at chantelrayway.com/wine. So here's another question. Why do I feel so emotional during my fast? I feel like I might be able to cry more when I'm fasting than not in a fasted state.
Sure. That's a great question. Some people get emotional, meaning they become a little bit sad, a little bit anxious. And some people actually get into this euphoric state. And I have patients who describe where when they're in ketosis or in a state of fat burn, even from a caloric restriction versus intermittent fast, they get into this kind of like zone where they're super motivated and their appetite actually is naturally suppressed. And that's actually the normal human behavior. After a duration of time of fasting, your body will adapt, it'll kick in, and then you go into appetite suppression. The other portion of folks actually could feel more anxious and depressed because of this intermittent fasting state. And it could be from many reasons. It could be hormonal disruptions, depending on your age. Some people may be in the cusp of changing hormones as a female, like perimenopause, menopause, and whatnot. Also, the distraction of everyday life, right? Food, a lot of times, is a very social, it plays a social aspect in our life. It's a component of what makes us us. And every day when you use food, or at least use idea of food to dictate kind of how you operate on a normal day, that change in general, meaning not eating, could actually affect you negatively. So some of my clients who go through a 7-day fast, for example, we have a little cleanse kit at my company where they have to just basically drink liquids, low calorie, low protein, low fat regimen for 7 solid days. They usually get in this kind of anxiety, depression mode, day 2 or day 3 into it. And, even though they're on point, they're actually losing weight. Psychologically, they are now realizing that how dependent they are on food and how it sort of makes an impact in their social life, and how it, not just with friends, but also with families, and how their life kind of is dependent on it. That could also play a huge role. So there's many factors. And I think that's one of those things where if you understand all the potential impact on you as an individual, then it just makes it a bit easier to tolerate. And just learn behavior as well. It's not going to stay. A lot of times these symptoms of depression and anxiety doesn't stay for very long. You do have to get over that hump. And that's also part of the whole psychology in dieting in general, because we are holding back on something that we're so used to. And it just happens to be, carbohydrates or proteins and fats. And so it is very telling, because it really does kind of tease out many different personalities in a population.
Yeah, and food releases the feel good hormone in your brain, which is dopamine, right? And so a lot of people say, okay, well, if I'm eating, I'm now getting that dopamine. And there was just a recent study that I read. It was from, I think it was like somewhere in Germany. It was like the metabolism research in Germany. And they said that dopamine is released in your brain actually at 2 different times. The first is when you first ingest the food. So like at your first bite of something really tasty, you get a dopamine release. And then another one is when the food actually reaches the stomach. And so if you're not eating, and you've been using food as a way to relieve stress. And so what happens is you actually, when you're not eating, you're giving yourself the ability to, instead of it's almost like an alcoholic, right? So if you, every time you're sad, you go up, I'm going to have some alcohol. I'm now masking the issue of whatever's really going on. Or if I'm using food to go up, I'm really sad, but now I'm going to have this brownie. Now I'm going to mask that sadness. And I think that's a big part of it, is that you're not using that food to mask that issue anymore. You're having to actually deal with the issue at hand of why you actually are sad. So that's one of the biggest reasons why you're also emotional during your fast. Would you agree?
Oh, totally, totally. I think food in general serves that purpose for a lot of people. Besides the 3 meals that we do eat in a day, which is oftentimes pretty sufficient, and breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But yeah, there's those snacks or in between meals where we find necessary. I come across a lot of people who feels this need to do the whole mid-afternoon, snack run, go to Starbucks and grab, scone or whatever. But it's like a daily occurrence. Or having half a pint of ice cream just before bed because they're watching TV by themselves in bed and it's cozy. They remember that when they actually go to the fridge and grab that pint of ice cream and take a couple bite of whatever ice cream they have, it just increases that dopamine effect. It's a feel-good hormone, right? And, sugar in itself, to me, it is a drug. It is probably as bad as cocaine, but yet it's not something that we can control because it's not illegal and we have to eat 3 times a day. So it's a question of, how is sugar serving you as a person? And if you find yourself kind of having that addiction towards this specific food group, I never met anyone with addiction to spinach, but it's always, sugar and high fat foods. And so if anyone in your audience right now, if you find yourself picking and choosing specifically on very high caloric dense foods, such as the carbs and fat, then likely you have already built tolerance in your brain, and we have receptors that recognizes obviously everything that we eat. But at the same time, these receptors also have short-term memory. And so it always goes back to what we know. Whatever that made us feel good, we'll go back for. And so just like you said, it is very addictive and people just find themselves being, they want to feel good all the time. So it's pretty dangerous, and it could be obviously dangerous to your health in the long run when you find yourself going down that path.
And what would you say are the top 5 tips of the best way to manage hunger while you're fasting? And how do you make it easier if you're trying to do a longer fast?
Sure. I would say number 1 would be commitment. Figuring out a reason why you're doing what you're doing. Oftentimes when you set a goal or have at least a reason for what you're trying to achieve, you can always go back to remind yourself. And even if it's writing it down in your journal saying, hey, this Monday, I'm going to start this for the next 3 weeks. And you may even write down the self-sabotage behavior that you may allow yourself to go through. What are the distractions in life as well, just to sort of write it all out and visualize it. Then setting the goal actually would make your journey a little bit easier. And holding yourself accountable, obviously, is part of why you want to write anything down. Number 2, when you do, make sure you are picking a regimen that is right for your lifestyle. And there are different variations of the intermittent fast, for example, out in the medical community. But if one doesn't work for you, then you can't just keep forcing yourself to do it because it becomes this negative reinforcement for you. So pick a regimen that is right for your lifestyle. 3, once you start, make sure you drink lots of fluids. And we forget this. I mean, even in intermittent fast, it doesn't mean total starvation. It means for, big portion of the day, you're not putting in fuel, but you can drink water. And so make sure you do hydrate well, because oftentimes, your volume of your body, meaning the indicator of like blood pressure, could very well change because you stop eating food in general. And so hydration is super important, because the last thing you need is becoming dehydrated and then getting some of the side effects of dehydration. The worst case scenario with you passing out and hitting your head. And that's not great while you're fasting. Number 4, is really understanding what you're going to eat when you start eating. The little short window of time that you are capable of eating. I'm not just saying like go do a drive-through and then acquire 3,000 calories that you didn't eat all day. A lot of the folks that are intermittent fasting have a really tight regimen as well. And in the little short window of time, you better be eating the high quality macronutrients and micros and even your vitamins and whatnot. So it does take a little thinking to create these types of regimen, basically ready to go when you are eating. And 5, be open and understand what your body is doing when you're undergoing the fast, right? And if you feel like you're just constantly getting headaches or side effects of a fasting state, then it's time you stop, even if you were seeing like great weight loss, for example, because sometimes you want to make sure the benefit outweighs the risk, and you don't want to be suffering from any adverse reactions from a good fast.
Hey guys, I'm so excited. My new book, One Meal and a Tasting, is out now. And if you order the book on Amazon, just the regular paperback edition, if you go in and make a review, you will get the audio book for free. Send a copy of your receipt to questions@chantelrayway.com and you'll get the audio book right away. Yeah, and I will give a couple of tricks for me. I would say the biggest one for me is if I'm trying to do a longer fast, I do just first say, okay, let me have either a cup of black coffee with, no cream or milk or sugar, or I'll have like a cup of green tea or a cup of green tea and hibiscus, because green tea really, really helps me. I don't know exactly why it does help me, but I know that I've read that green tea can kind of help decrease the hormone responsible for hunger called ghrelin. And for me, just steeping some green tea, and I do it with a little hibiscus, it makes a really big difference. Sometimes I'll just drink some really great water. Fiji water, I know it's expensive, but it's one of the waters that it has so much hydration for me. I feel a lot different when I have that water, and it's supposed to like get some of the metals out of your system. So that's another one. And then I'll do like an organic kind of carbonated water sometimes, because if it's plain water, not sweetened with any kind of anything, but something about the sparkles in the carbonated water really kind of helps me. It makes you feel faster, full, like even though you're just having water, but I guess that it has that carbon dioxide and
Sure.
it just kind of makes you feel full, even if you're not really. And sometimes I hate apple cider vinegar, but every once in a while, if I'm trying to do a longer fast, I'll just take like a tablespoon of that. And I'm just like, it's so disgusting. I'll kind of go back to that. But I like what you said about your mindset, of really kind of saying, okay, your mindset is the most powerful organ that you have. And so just, sometimes you think you're hungry. And so for me, I have to really kind of process like, what am I feeling right now, and start looking at what my goals are. And then the number one thing that I can do is to distract myself. But if I'm going to distract myself, then right after that, it's walking. Because if I go on a walk, it could be a half-mile walk, it could be a 1-mile walk, it could be a 3-mile walk. But the second I walk, it really gets me it can take me another 2 hours. And then, to kind of take it to the next level.
Yeah, and walking is great. And even just during COVID, a lot of people are sort of stuck in their homes, and it really disrupts their, exercise schedule and their normal everyday life, from going to work, come back from work, and now you're just stuck in your living room, almost like this place. And then your kitchen is just an arm stretch away, right? And so walking itself is great because you're probably you're optimizing, or you're benefiting from the whole visual distraction. So the fact is, you're out and about, all of a sudden you just forget about the fact that you are hungry. And and that's sometimes it's all you need. It's just that quick little distraction. So you focus on something else besides the fact. And then, of course, hunger pangs and cravings and whatnot. We have to understand that you're either hungry because your body's feeling deficiency in nutrients and minerals and whatnot versus just desires and cravings, which is very psychological. Even the distraction of seeing a quick little commercial or taking a whiff in the parking lot at McDonald's, for example, could set someone down that path of cravings, when in reality, your body doesn't need it at all. And so being able to separate these two, hunger pangs for actual survival versus just distraction and seeing an ad and whatnot, is very different. So you can bounce into craving as well as getting out of craving really quickly just by the fact that you can distract yourself, just like you said. So that's a great point.
Well, you are just really an expert here. It's been such a pleasure having you on this show. Thank you so much for being here. Tell listeners where they can find you, where they can follow you, and tell us a little bit about Nucific.
Perfect. Yeah. So I am the head of nutrition for Nucific, which is an online nutrition supplement company. We've been around for 6 years that I've been with them. So you can definitely look me up on their website at www.nucific.com. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok under my name, Dr. Amy_Lee. For more content and information. So I like to do a lot of these posts on diets and ingredients and all the lifestyle stuff. So hopefully we will connect there.
Awesome. Well, you guys stay tuned. We've got another episode coming up in just a few. Bye-bye for now.